Hey there, welcome to this video. So I'm back with some amazing content. So today we are going to learn how we can create a job application API with the help of Spring Boot. So we are going to make use of Spring Boot, which is the most popular Java-based web framework. And we are also going to make use of IntelliJ and PostMan for the same. So if you have not subscribed to this particular channel, you should definitely subscribe right now, enable the notifications and also smash that like button. That will motivate me to bring such amazing content for you all. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Hello everybody, welcome to this class. So this is going to be about the overview of the project that we are going to build. So this is what we are going to architect and this is what we are going to write code for. So we are going to build a job application, all right, and this application will be responsible for managing jobs. Now, jobs will be posted by companies and companies will have reviews. So typically on a job site, whenever you visit, you have a job posted and that job belongs to a particular company. And then reviews are there against that particular company as to how that workplace is. And this is usually posted by the employees who are the users of the website as well. So we're going to keep things simple. We're going to have controller, service, and repository. So let's start talking about the repository first. So we are going to store jobs. Okay. So jobs is going to go to the database. We will have company that will be stored in the database, and then we have review information against each company which is going to be stored in the database. And we are going to have 3 repositories that will manage each one of them. All right. So we have job repository, company repository, and review repository. All right. Now this repository will communicate with service, and service will also communicate with this repository. So service is where the business logic will reside. So we will have like job service, company service, and review service. So we'll keep these 3 services different. Okay, they will be in different files, and we will manage them separately because they are managing a particular entity in the application. So this is going to be about service, and then we will have the controller over here, which is responsible for handling the requests that we are getting from the users. So we will have 3 controller files over here, or 3 controllers that we'll create. One is the job controller, the company controller, and the review controller. Now, it's pretty clear and evident from the diagram as to how this application will work, but I'll still give you a walkthrough. So there will be a request that will be triggered from the user, right from the browser, or from an application like PostMan. Okay, so we are going to create APIs. So this is going to be a browser or like something like PostMan. So we are going to get a request over here, and controller is going to take hold of that request. And that request is going to be routed to the service, and service is going to be the place where our business logic resides. And service is going to make use of repository, and repository in turn will get the data from the database. So we are going to have a database as well that will be configured with this application. Now once the request hits database and it's processed by repository, we get a response back that you can see over here. And response is given back to the client or the user who is accessing our service right from the browser or from an app like PostMan. And this entire application is going to be hosted on a server, okay? And we are going to access this on localhost. So this is what we are going to build, and this is a short overview of what our project is going to look like. So I hope this was useful. I'm excited to get started on this. So let us get started by setting up our project. So to set up the project, we are going to head over to our favorite website, start.spring.io, which is Spring Initializer. So if you are a Spring Boot developer or if you wish to become, this has to be your favorite website. Okay, so we are here, and let's get started with the configuration and setting up the properties that we need for the project. So I'll set up this as a Maven project. I'll keep this version selected. And if you see a different version number over here, that is perfectly fine. Okay, just make sure you don't select the snapshot version and you choose the latest one available over here, which is written without snapshot. Okay, so I'll choose this one because this is available right now. And like I said, if you see a different version, that's completely fine. Okay, just select that. The project will work normally as expected. Now group, I'll say com.embarkx. Okay, and artifact, I'll keep the artifact as first job app, something like this. And here I'll say job app to learn. Okay, or I'll just keep it as job application, something like this. All right, and I'll have the packaging as jar and Java version 17 selected. From the dependencies, I'll add one dependency, which is of Spring Web. Okay, so this is going to be a web application, and I'm just going to include one dependency, which indicates that we are building a web application, and it's going to include RESTful services, Spring MVC, and Tomcat as the embedded container as well. I would request you all to click generate and download the source code. So you will get a zip file, and you can store this zip file on your system at your preferred location. All right, so that's what you can do. So that's about setting up the project. So let us start talking about the job application that we are going to build, and let's set some expectations. So this is the app that we are building, and this is the complete app that we would be having. All right, so this has three layers: controller, you can see service, as well as repository, which in turn talks to the database. But to begin with, we are not going to implement all of this, but instead we are going to implement only this part. So we are going to have just the controller for job and the service for job, and we are not going to have the database right now. All right, and this is because we are going to go step by step. So we are first going to understand and learn how a controller works with the service and how the response travels back from the service to the user. Okay, so once we are done with this, we will move and we'll add a new layer, which will be the repository layer for job, and then eventually we'll do the same for the rest of the application, which means the company and the review as well. So we will be going step by step so that it is not overwhelming for you. Okay, and we'll keep things simple in the beginning, and then we will work incrementally to improve this application. Okay, so this is what I wanted to mention and set the expectations as to what we are going to do with the app. All right, so are you ready? Let's get started. So we set up everything on Spring Initializer and we hit generate. Now hitting generate will give us this zip file, okay, which I have downloaded over here. Now what I will do is I will extract this file over here. Okay, I'll say extract here, and we have this project folder, my first job app, okay, which has all the files that is needed. Now what we need to do is we need to head over to IntelliJ IDEA. So in IntelliJ, I need to go over here to file. I need to say open, okay, and I need to select the first job app over here, okay, which is what we extracted right now. I'll say okay, and I'll get this opened in this window. You can even choose the new window if you wish to keep this window open, but I'll choose this window, okay, and this project will be closed, which I had opened initially. Now this is loading and it's resolving the dependencies, as you can see here at the bottom. Okay, I'll just close all of this. So now we have the entire project structure over here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to the Java folder. Okay, I have my package here and my first job application over here. Now what we are going to do is we are going to create the project structure. So I'm going to create a new folder. Okay, I'm going to say a new package. and I'm going to say job over here. Okay, so all job related files will come in this particular folder. I'm just going to keep things a bit organized. And within job, I'm going to say new, and I'm going to create a controller over here. And I'm going to call this file job controller. Like so. Okay, just mind the spelling. So I'm calling this job controller because we are going to have more controllers in future, like the company controller and the review controller. All right. And I wish to keep things separate for company and review. So I'll call this job controller, and I'll have all the endpoints related to job over here. So I'll say enter. Okay. I'll say don't ask again, and it will add this file to the Git. All right. So we have created this file. Okay. Now what am I going to do? So I'll collapse this. Now here I'm going to start defining our controller over here. Okay. So I'm going to say public class. Sorry, not class. I'm going to return something over here. So this is the endpoint that we are creating to return all the jobs. Okay. So I'm going to return something over here, a list of jobs it will be, and I'll say find all, like so. So whenever we call this particular endpoint, you get the list of all jobs. Okay. And I'll say all jobs, like so. Okay. Now over here, this list has to be of a particular type. Okay. And I'll say this list has to be of job type. Okay. Now job is something that we have not created, and we have neither created this particular variable over here. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll first create the job class. Okay. So I'll say more actions. I'll say create class job. And it is asking me for the destination package over here. Okay. So whether you want to create it over here. So I'll say yes, and I'll say okay. So this class is created now. Okay. Now we need to define what all we need in this class and what all information we need to store against a particular job. So I'm going to say private. I'm going to add long ID. So first is we are going to have an ID which is unique to every job. Okay. Then I'm going to say private long title. So every job has a title. Then I'm going to say, okay, so title need not be long. It has to be string, and I need to have string again, and we need to have description. Okay. So I can say description over here. Then we need private string, and I'll say min salary, like so. And I'll duplicate this line, and I'll make this as max salary. So what we are doing is we are collecting the salary range with the help of min salary and max salary. And I'll duplicate this line again. So a shortcut to duplicate in IntelliJ is Control D if you're on Windows and Command D if you're on Mac. Okay. So it will simply duplicate the line like this. Okay. So I'll just delete this. Now here, last thing I'll have is location. So these are the fields that every job is going to have. So it will have an ID, title, description, minimum salary, maximum salary, and a location. All right. So here in this class now, I wish to generate the constructor and some getter setters for these fields. So I'll right click. I'll say generate, and I'll say generate a constructor. I'll select everything. Okay. And I'll say okay. So we have a constructor over here. Okay. Now let us generate some getters and setters. Okay. So I'll say right click, generate getter and setter, select all. Okay. Done. So we have this class now set up. Okay. Now let us head over to job controller. Okay. We have job coming up over here. Now we are getting an error on list. Okay. Which is fine. So we need to import list. Okay. Now here what we need to do is, so we are returning this list. Okay. And we are returning this jobs. Now this is not defined. So we need to define this. So what I will do is I'll say private list, and this will be an object of job type like so. And I'll say jobs is equal to new array list like so. Okay. So initially, since we don't have a database, we are going to manage things with the help of a list over here. Okay. And here I'm going to map this to a mapping, and I'm going to say get mapping like so. Okay. And I'm going to say /jobs. Okay. So whenever we hit this URL, this method gets called, okay, which is find all, and you get the list of all the jobs that exist in the application. I'll hit save. Okay. And we can run this particular application. So I'll go over here and I'll say run. So we'll wait until this application is up and running, and you can see it's running now. Now we can head over to the local host and we can access this URL over here. So now here I'll go to localhost :8080 like so. And this will definitely give an error. I can say /jobs. Okay. So /jobs also gave an error, and what is the reason for the same? Okay. All right. So I got the reason. So one thing that we missed over here is we didn't map this particular controller as REST controller. So I need to say REST controller over here. I'll save and I'll rerun the application. So the application is up and running. Now if I go over here and if I hit refresh, you can see we get an empty list or an empty array, you can say. This is an empty list, in fact. So what we have done is we have defined an endpoint. So first we set up the entire project into IntelliJ, and then we defined an endpoint which gives us the list of all the jobs that exist in our application. And we are managing jobs right now with the help of a list. All right. So this is how you can fetch all the jobs in your application. Right now we are getting an empty list, which is fine. We don't have anything defined yet, which will define gradually. Okay. But this is how you can map an endpoint. So let us move forward in this job application and let us create an endpoint wherein we can add jobs into our job app. Okay. So we have one endpoint which gets all the jobs in our application. Now, what all can be the different endpoints that we will be building? So I'll paste some endpoints over here. Okay. So this is what we are going to be building. We are going to have a get endpoint, which is to get all the jobs. We have get endpoints followed by the ID, which will get a specific job by ID. So this is going to be a get request, wherein we append the ID and we are just going to get that particular ID. Then we have a post request using which we can create the job, a new job into our app. And then we have a delete request using which we can delete a job. Additionally, we have a put request using which we can update a specific job by ID. And then we have an endpoint using which we can get the company associated with an ID. But since we don't have the company entity as of now, I'm just going to skip this part for now. Okay. I'll just delete it from both the places. And here below, I have example API URLs as to how you can call these endpoints. So you have the base URL, which is localhost :8080 right now, /jobs. It will be get request and so on for all the other endpoints. So these are all the endpoints that I'm going to have pasted over here as a comment. Okay. And we are going to refer over here whenever we build a new endpoint. So we have this first endpoint done. Okay. It's a get request. You can see over here. And we even tried calling it from the browser. Okay. Using this. So now we need to add a new job into our application. Okay. Now how do we do that? So we are going to use the same endpoint wherein we have defined the get request. But this time we are going to have a post request that is going to handle this particular endpoint, and it is going to take the details of the job and it is going to add it into our application. Okay. So let's head over. We'll scroll up over here. Okay. And to save time, or I don't think I'll copy this. Okay. The method is going to be a bit different. So I'll just end up typing over here. I'm going to say post mapping first. Okay. post mapping. I'm going to say /jobs. Okay. And then I'm going to say public string create job. Okay. So this is going to be the method that we are going to define. And this is going to be add. Okay. So what we are doing is we have a list that is maintaining all the jobs. Okay. Now, whenever we get a request over here to add new jobs, we are simply going to get the job data and we are going to add it to this list. Okay. So I'm going to add the job over here. Okay. Now we need to define this variable here. Okay. So this variable is not defined yet. So I'm going to accept this variable as a parameter. So I'm going to say job and job like so. And this is something that we are going to get along with the request, which is the post mapping. And I'm going to get in the form of request body. So I'm going to specify request body over here. Okay. And I'm going to have a string return over here, which is going to be a success message. So I'm going to say return, and the message can be job added successfully. Like this is just a simple message that I have. You can have any custom message of your choice. Okay. Now, what we are going to do is I'm going to run this. Okay. So this is getting deployed now and it's done. Okay. It started. Now, since this is a post request, we cannot use browser over here because with post request, we need to send some additional field. Like in this case, we have request body here. Okay. And there are a set of specific tools that we need for this. Okay. And one of such tool is PostMan, which we have already installed on our system. Okay. So I'm going to make use of PostMan over here and I'm going to use this to query our job application. Okay. So here, instead of hello, what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify this to job. Okay. Or the endpoint name was jobs. So I'm going to keep it jobs. And here in the body, instead of Spring Boot, I'm going to have some JSON over here. Okay. So this is going to accept the request in the form of JSON. Now we need to construct a JSON with all the fields that we have. All right. And how are we going to do that? So we can make use of a tool. Okay. So I can go over here and I can say JSON lint. So you can search for JSON lint and you will see this first link over here, which helps you create JSON. Okay. It helps you validate JSON in fact, but you can even use it to create JSON. Okay. And this is one of the best tools out there. All right. So I'm going to have a JSON out here. Okay. So here I am going to say, so what are the fields? We have fields like ID here. I can say I have title. Okay. I have description. Like so. I have min salary. All right. And then I have max salary. Like so. Okay. And I also have location. Okay. So I have all the fields that I have defined in my entity. Okay. So here, this is the job class that I have. And here I have defined all these fields and I have just added all of this over here. Okay. Now I'm going to add values against these items. So I'm going to say ID is 1. Okay. Title is like a new developer opening. So I can say, or I can say software engineer needed. Like so. Now description is, I can say a test description. Like so. Okay. And everything needs to end with a comma. So I'll also add a comma in the end. So we are constructing our JSON right now. Minimum salary is like, let's say I'll say 30,000. Okay. And I'll say 40,000 here. Maximum salary. Like so. Okay. And then I'll have the location. So location you can have as New Jersey. Okay. Once you're done with this, you can say validate JSON. So I can just say here and you will get this message. It's a valid JSON. Okay. Now if you're getting errors, you need to fix the issues. So if you miss any comma over here, let's say I miss a comma over here, and if I say validate, you'll get an error. Okay, so you can see it's also highlighting the error like test description, and then you have directly min salary. So your test description and you have min salary, you're missing a comma here. Okay, and keep in mind the last thing over here, the location, does not end with a comma. Okay, if you add and if you say validate, you get an error. So just be careful about this, okay, and have a same format, okay, so that you have this valid message coming over here. Now we are going to copy this like so. I'm going to head over to Postman over here, and I'm going to paste this JSON in the body. So this is the body I have. So it's a post request. I've selected post. This is the URL. Within body, I have pasted this over here. I've selected raw. Okay. Now here instead of text, I need to change this to JSON because we are sending JSON data over here. All right. And with this, I can say send. Now the moment I say send, I get this message, job added successfully. Okay. Now if we head over to our browser and if we call this URL, you can see this is what is being sent as the response, and this is coming directly from our application, which indicates that the job that we had sent with ID 1, title software engineer needed, this was the description. So all of this has been saved into our application. Okay, so it's working perfectly fine. All right, and if you go over here in our application, if you click on run, okay, if you scroll down, okay, we don't have any error message or anything over here, which means that it's been added. All right, now you can even run this get request right from Postman so that you don't need to juggle between two tabs over here. Okay, so I can say new HTTP request. So click on new over here. On the top left, you have this new, and you make sure you have get selected, paste this over here, and you get a well formatted JSON. Okay, and you also get 200. Okay, so this is working perfectly fine. You can add as many jobs you want. So I can send this request once again. Okay, and you will see 2 jobs coming up over here. Okay, so this is how you can add jobs. So that is about this class, and we're done setting up the post request wherein we can add a new job into our application. So I hope you all enjoyed this, and I shall see you all soon. Thank you. Hello everybody, welcome to this class. So in this lecture, we are going to do some setup related work with Postman. Of course, we have installed Postman. We are calling the APIs. It's working well. But there is some additional setup that I believe needs to be done. And if you do it, it would be beneficial for you. So what is happening right now is we are seeing this history tab and all the requests that we have created over here. Now, the thing is, we are not saving these requests. Okay, so if you close this, it is coming in the history format. Okay, so if I close all the tabs, it's coming over here in the history form. And if you delete Postman or anything happens, you have essentially deleted all these requests that you have created. And you might want to reuse these requests later on or whenever you are testing something. Okay, so what we can do is we can save these requests. Okay, now what I would recommend is you can say add to collection over here. Okay, you can see this button over here. Now, what is this concept of collection over here? So in Postman, you can save a request within collection. So collection is nothing but like a group of all the API requests within Postman. So within this collection, you can have like 10 API requests that have been saved by you, for example. Okay, and you can categorize API requests that you are saving in the form of collections. But you cannot add anything to collection right now. You need to create an account. So I would recommend you create an account over here. Okay, you can either click on this add collection, or you can say sign in if you already have an account, or you can say create an account from here. Okay. So it will take me to the browser over here, and I can put in my email. So I'll say embarkxofficial@gmail.com, or instead I can just sign up using Google. Okay. So I'll just copy this email so that I don't have to type in again, and I'll say sign up with Google. I'll use another account. Okay. I'll add embarkx and I'll just sign up over here. So I've entered my password, and so basically you will be prompted with this particular pop-up here, wherein you would be asked to accept the license. You can read through the license if you wish to, but I'll say accept. Okay, and we'll wait for the redirect, and it will show you this pop-up now. So do you want to open this application? So I'll say open Postman, and once you open this, okay, so you will notice that you will be logged in. So this is taking a bit of time. Okay. So it's saying welcome to Postman and tell us a bit about yourself. So it is now onboarding us to this particular application. So now I'll say my name as embarkx official. I'll just keep it embarkx, and my role is I am, let's say, a full stack developer. I'll get started. Okay. And I'll say got it. Okay. Now we'll have a history tab over here. So suddenly you will see we didn't have all these tabs. Okay. And now you can see we have tabs like collection. Okay. We have tabs like environments over here on the left hand side. You have history as well. All right. And what you can do is you can go to history. Okay. We have just added this particular request here, and you can see the save button enabled over here now after you logged in. Okay. So you can definitely save this, and it will ask you where you want to save this request. Okay. So it's telling you that you don't have any collections, and collections let you group related requests. So if you have multiple API requests that you are doing that are for a particular application, you can group them together, okay, using a collection. All right. Now you can say create a collection over here because I don't have a collection, and I can name my collection. So I can say job application over here. I'll say create. Okay. And the save button is enabled now. Okay. I'll say save. So you can see this has now been saved to the collection. So this was the post request. I'll just close this. Okay. This is another post request. And I can go to the history and I can simply save the get request as well. Okay. Here is a get request. So I'll save this get request and I'll save it to the collection. The collection is selected now by default. You can add a description as well if you wish to. Okay. But I won't. So I'll just get this saved. Okay. I'll save this hello application as well. So these API requests. Okay. And I'll change this. I'll create a new collection and I'll say hello world app. Like so. This is saved. And I'll save the get request as well. You can save everything you need. Okay. And if you go to collections now, collections tab, you will see. So if I right click over here on the API request tab, I can close all the tabs. Okay. Now here under collection, you will see these collections here. Okay. Which have been created. So these are like folder, and this does a really good job of organizing all the APIs. Okay. So you can click on this. You can have this saved. Okay. You can modify this and you can save it again. You can create a copy of this. Okay. So I can go over here as well. Click on 3 dots, duplicate this. Okay. You can duplicate this as well. So all these are the possibilities with Postman, and you should leverage these possibilities. Okay. So if something happens to Postman and if you have not signed up and if you have not saved the API request, you have to create the API request again. Okay. You need to write the JSON again. It takes time. Okay. But this is much more easier, and we have this functionality, and you can leverage this by doing a simple free sign up. All right. So this is about Postman in how you can save the API requests. Welcome to this class. So let us start setting up the job service. So right now we have job control over here, And what is happening is we are handling the logic of adding job into our controller. We don't have a service created yet. All right. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a new service. So I'm going to go to our project structure here. Okay. And here I'm going to add a new file under job package, and I'm going to call this class as job service, like so. Okay. Now this service can be a class, okay, but if you want to promote loose coupling, you need to define this as an interface. So I'll just change this keyword over here as an interface, okay, and I'll have the implementation for this in a package. So I'll have a package again over here. I'll call this package as IMPL, okay, and I'll create a new class here, and I'll call this as job service implementation, like so. So we created this as an interface to promote loose coupling. Okay. Now this depends on your requirements. Okay. You can have your service, you can have this as a class and have all the code written over here. But if you want to promote loose coupling and have some modularity in your code base, you can consider separating the interface and the implementation. And that is what I have chosen. All right. So here within job service, you will have like the methods defined. Now these are the methods that will mention like what all methods whoever implements this particular interface needs to define. Okay. So the first one I'll say here, find all. So this is what will return all the jobs. Okay. Then I'll have create a job. Okay. And this is the one that will create the job for us. Okay. Now I'll specify the return type. I'll say list here, and I'll add the return type as job, like so. Now here for create job, I'll say void, because we don't need to add anything to return over here. Okay. Now this is done. The interface definition is done. Okay. What we can do now is we can head over to this implementation class, and I'll implement the job service here, like so. Now, of course, if you're implementing an interface, you are going to get an error, and it will ask you to implement all the methods that exist within this particular interface. So I'll say like I want to implement, and it will create this boilerplate code for me. Okay. And I need to provide my own implementation here. Okay. Now what I need to do is I need to add the logic which I had written in the controller over here. Okay. And I need to move this logic into the service. All right. And what I can do is I'll move this declaration first. Okay. So I'll have a declaration here, like so. Okay. And I'll return the jobs. And here, instead of create, okay, so this create job will have a parameter which we have not defined. Okay. So we need to have a parameter. So I'll define the parameter in the interface as well. Okay. I'll say job, and here I'll say job, like so. Okay. And I'll say jobs dot add job, like so. Okay, so we have added this, and I'll just format this code. Okay. So yeah, we are done defining the service over here. Okay. Now we can refactor the controller as well, because since we have moved all the logic to like add and return the job into the service, we need some refactoring here. So I'll delete this over here. We don't need this. Now instead of get mapping here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call job service. Okay. So I can say, but before calling job service, I'll also need a job service object. So I'll say private job service. So I'll create an object of the interface, and I'll call this as job service, like so. Okay. And I'll say over here, job service dot find all. Okay. And here also job service. Instead of add, the method name is create a job. Okay. So this is something that we'll do. Now the thing is, this is not initialized. Okay. We have not initialized job service yet. Now how do we initialize? Now this is where Spring Boot's magic comes into picture. Okay. And you'll see how it makes your life easy. So now if you go to job service implementation over here, okay, this is a service and we need to tell Spring Boot that, hey, this class is a service, and you do that by using an annotation called service. You can see this annotation here. We'll add this annotation and you'll see this import statement being added. Okay, like so. Now this is done. Now when you mark this as a service, what Spring Boot does is it will make this thing available on the runtime and it will inject it to the controller. Now how does it inject? So we can say right click, I'll say generate. We just need to give or define a constructor over here. And during runtime, Spring Boot will take care of making the job service object available to this particular controller and it will get initialized over here. So we don't need to do tight coupling. Okay, so this is very loosely coupled. All right, and this is all done by Spring Boot. Like we are just following the convention and Spring Boot is doing the job behind the scenes. All right, so this is done. All right, now what we have done is we have refactored our code to add a service. Okay, and this service will help us by adding the job and also fetching the jobs. So I'll rerun this application. Let us see. So the application is started. Let us head over to Postman. Okay. So here in Postman, I'll say get the jobs first. So this is giving me all the jobs and there are no jobs defined yet. Now I'll say create this job. Okay. So let us create. You can see job added successfully. Now let us fetch the jobs. Okay, you can see the jobs we had added, like the job we had added is being returned to us in the API. So this is working perfectly fine and refactoring has been successful. So we have now moved all the logic that we had written. We had just a little bit of logic which we have moved to this service class, and now service is responsible for working on this. Okay. Now, one thing I wanted to show you, what happens if you skip the ID. Okay. So let us say if I try to add a job without ID. Okay. Let me add this one. It got added successfully. Now, if I try to get over here and if I expand this a bit, you will see we have one job with ID 1 and another job with ID null. So null IDs are being added and technically this should not be the case. Like the application should take the responsibility of generating unique IDs to whatever objects are being created. All right. We should not rely on user because user might give a duplicate ID or something like that. So this brings us to the point as to where we need to manage the IDs. All right. So that's about this class. Let us see how we can go forward with this app. Welcome back. So right now we have a small problem in our application. If we are sending a job with no ID, it is being added as null. Okay, it's a small problem. And what I want to do is I want you all to take this up as a small challenge wherein you try to fix this problem. Okay, I'm also going to give you some hints as to how you can fix this. So if you head over to your service where you are adding the job. So this is the service class. So this is a service class where we are adding the job. So before adding the job, okay, you need to maintain an ID which gets incremented every time you add a new job. And this is something that can be managed by a class level variable. Okay, so you can attempt this particular challenge, come back and watch the solution. Welcome back. So I hope you all had a chance to attempt this one. All right. I'll start solving this myself and then you can compare this with your solution. So you need to have a list ID basically being maintained in your class. So you can say private, long, and you can say next ID. So this is the variable that I am using to keep track of ID that we have in our application. Okay, I'll say 1 L over here. Now this is long value. That is why I'm appending it with L. Now before adding the jobs over here, you can say job dot set ID. So we have a setter and we are going to set this ID to our job. Okay. And we are going to say next ID plus plus. Okay. So what this will do is it will set the current ID to the job object and then it will increment it by 1. So the next object that we have gets the incremented value and then this value is again incremented. Okay. So I hope this clarifies and we will rerun our application now. Let us see how this goes. So the application is started. Let's head over to Postman. So in Postman, I'll go to get request first. So since we reran our application, okay, the job list is reset. So I'll create a new job, but this time without sending an ID. Okay, you got 200. Okay. And now if you say send, you get 1 as the ID. Okay. Now whatever ID you pass will be overridden. Okay. So if I press Ctrl Z and I bring back the ID field that I had present earlier. Okay. And if I keep the ID as 1, okay, and I say software engineer with ID 1, just to identify this particular object. And if I say send, you will see you get successful message again. Now if you go to get request and if you say get, you will see the ID that we had passed for this object is overridden with 2. Okay. So this is what happens. So basically what is happening is whatever you are passing over here is being overridden by the code or the setter that we have used in our application. All right, which is perfectly fine. We want to have control over the IDs and we don't want to give the control of generating IDs to the end user. Typically, that is not the case. If you're signing up for a bank account, you have a customer ID which is in the control of the bank and it's a ID that is generated with the logic that is set by the bank and you as a user cannot decide that. It would be like just giving away the control. It would not be correct, basically telling users to like select the IDs. Okay. So this is something that application needs to have control on and that is something that we have built over here. All right. So that's about IDs and how you can generate it on the fly from your application. Let us start talking about how can you start fetching a single job. So in our application, we have defined the all jobs endpoint. Now we need a way to get a single job or a specific job by ID. So every job in our application has this field ID. And we want a way to get a particular job using this unique identifier. All right. And we are going to achieve this with the help of a get request. Okay. And we are going to have a parameter in the URL. So what is this parameter in the URL? So if you head over to your browser, so let me open up the browser here. Okay. Let me go to Google. Now on Google, if you search for Java, you will see your search query being passed in the URL. You can see over here. Okay. Now if I change this particular thing here, I can say Java 17 and search. You will see the search query also being updated over here. So this is the query, like the parameter. So whatever user has searched has been passed in the URL that is visible to the user. Okay. This is fetched by the Google server. Okay. So whenever this request hits Google server, there is a piece of code that checks for this particular parameter and it scans the database for the list of search results, and it returns to the browser. So that is how this thing works. And you can see this clearly, this is being passed in the URL. Okay. And this is being passed in the form of a query parameter. Now, another thing, if you go to Amazon.com, okay, if you select any product, let's say I select Kindle, everything has a unique identifier over here. So this is the product ID or a unique identifier. So if I copy this and if I search on the entire page, you can see this is the ASIN of the product, okay, which is one of the unique identifiers for anything on Amazon or any product on Amazon. Now, if you scroll down and if you open some other product, so let me check where the suggestions are. So let's say if I open this particular novel, you will see this has a different identifier, okay? And if I copy and search this on the entire web page, you will see this is the ASIN again, okay? So what is happening is this is the URL, okay? Then you have the URL slug, okay? Or this is the URL that is being constructed using the title over here. And then you have DP, and then you have this unique identifier which gives you the product. Now, once this URL is hit, okay, even if you remove all this like a trailing thing, so let us say if I select all of this entire piece, and if I delete this, you will still be able to get the result. Okay, so those were some additional parameters that were being passed as to how you landed on this particular page, whether you came here through suggestions and so on, okay, or you clicked on ad and so on. So Amazon keeps track of all of this. So here you have this changing dynamically, okay. So the point I'm trying to make here is this is a URL and you have something dynamic in the URL which tells you what product to return to the user, okay. Likewise, in our application, okay, here you have jobs, which is returning all the job, okay, but you really want a new request over here. So I'll duplicate this, okay, and now here you can say job /1. So this should technically return the job having one ID. So here you have a job with ID 1, like you can see. So technically JSON should be returned when you fire this particular request, okay. So this is what we need to define, and this can keep on changing. So this will change to 1, this can be 2, or this can be 1000. So any ID can be passed, and this part of the URL is completely dynamic, like we saw in the case of Amazon and Google, okay. So this particular thing that is dynamic in the URL is known as query parameters, okay. So we'll head over to our code and we will define this dynamic thing, okay, which will keep on changing, okay. So I'll come over here and I'll say over here, I'll say public. So this will be a public method, and what will it return? So here for find all, we are returning the list of jobs. But since here we are fetching a particular job, this will just return the job object, okay, and it will say get job by ID, like so, okay. This method name can be anything, it's perfectly fine. And here you will say long ID. So I'll say long and I'll get ID. Now here we will need to write some logic, okay, which we will write in shortly, okay, but before that we will have to map this particular method to the URL. So I'll say get mapping, like so here, and you will say job. So we need the URL as jobs, so jobs /ID. So I'll say jobs / and I'll define this curly brace like so, and I'll say ID over here. So whenever you mention something like this, okay, this tells Spring Boot that this is dynamic, okay, and this is the variable name. So whatever comes in over here in this part of the URL should be assigned to this particular variable, And that is what we are accepting over here. Now to accept this properly, we need to add an annotation over here, which is called as path variable. So path variable makes sure that whatever variable you are getting in the URL path is being assigned to this particular variable that you have defined with this annotation. Okay. So once you have just defined this, Spring Boot will take care of the rest. So whenever you call the URL with this particular or any ID in this particular format, it will make sure that this variable or this method parameter has that value assigned, and it can be used within the method then, right? So I hope this makes sense. Now let's start writing the logic over here. So I'll say job is equal to, I'll get job service dot, and I'll say get job by ID. So we are going to have this method defined, okay, and I'll pass in this parameter. Okay. Now this method does not exist, so I'll say create this method, and this method is created now. Okay. Now once this method is created over here in the interface, and if you go to this particular class, you're going to start getting an error. And the error is you need to implement that method. So I'll say implement. Okay. And you can see the implementation code come up over here. All right. Now here, what we need to do is we have an array list of jobs mentioned over here. Okay. And here we need to fetch the job with this particular ID, and we need to return it to the controller. Now, how do we do that? So we will be doing this with the help of a for loop. Okay. So I'll say for. Okay. And we can have a for each loop, in fact, and I'll say for each job. Okay. And then I'll say from jobs. So this is the list that we are working with. And then I'll say if job dot get ID. So for every job, we are comparing the ID dot equals. So if it equals this ID, okay, then what we need to do is we need to return the job. Return job. Like so. Okay. And if the match is not found, we return null. Like so. Now we are getting some error over here. Missing return statement. Okay. So what is exactly missing over here? Alright. So we are missing one round curly braces. Okay. So we have added the curly brace and still we have an error. So let me see. Okay. So this return statement needs to come outside the for loop. Like so. Okay. So what we are doing is with the help of for each loop, we are iterating through the list and we are comparing every ID with that of what we have got from the query parameter. Okay. And we are returning the job over here. Now this is being returned to the controller, and controller takes this in this variable here, and it will return it to the user. So I'll say return job like so. Okay. So once we are done with this, what we can do is we can rerun this application and we can check this output into the Postman. So the application is started. Okay. Now over here, I'll hit save. Okay. And I'll say send. Now you can see over here. Okay. So we didn't get any job because none of the job exists right now. Okay. Which is perfectly fine. So I will have the name changed over here. Okay, so since we duplicated this request, the name was not same, and I'll hit save. Now I'll create a job over here. So I'll send this. Okay, and then I'll go over here and I'll get that job. And you can see we are able to get this particular job. Now if I create one more job over here with ID, let's say 2. Okay, and if I hit send, job added successfully. And now if I say 1, you get the one with ID 1. And if I change this to 2, you get the one with ID 2. So this is indeed working perfectly fine. All right. Now if I make this as 3, you don't get any response. Okay, so I need to have some response over here. Okay, now how do I add a response? So I can add some basic validation over here. I can say if job, so I'll do some comparison over here. I'll say if job not equal to null. Okay, so if the job is not found, we'll get null as the result and we'll return job over here. Okay, otherwise what we will do is we'll return new job over here. I'll say 1L. Okay, I'll say test job, and I'll just have some dummy values because I cannot return a string over here, because if I add a string, the return type of this method is job, so I'll get an error over here. Okay, so I'll just keep everything as test. Okay, like this can also be 2000 like so. Okay, or this needs to be string like so. Okay, and press enter so that it's visible in a single screen, and I'll have the location as well added like so. Okay, now if I redeploy, let me rerun this. So the application is deployed. Now if I head over to Postman, let me add some jobs. Okay, I added 1, 2 and 3 jobs. Now if I go over here, if I say 3, I get the one with ID 3. If I say 31, I get, okay, test job, and this is a dummy response. Okay, so we can add, like instead of test job, we can say not found, but that is not the right way. Like you're getting the response in the job format. Okay, so this is not the right way of doing, but we will fix this shortly. All right, but what I want to highlight over here is when you enter or when you try to find a job that does not exist in the database, you are getting the response code as 200 OK, which should be 404. So 404 not found. That is what should come over here ideally. Because even if you are not able to find that particular resource with ID 31, you're still getting 200 OK. Okay, so this needs to be customized. All right, there has to be some enhancements that we need to do in our source code. But for now, we'll pause over here and we'll come back to this shortly. Hello everybody, let's start talking about the response code now. So we noticed that if you give an ID that does not exist in the database or any random ID, and if you say send, you still get 200 OK, and you have to pass this response over here, which is a job object. Okay, you might want to have a better control over this. Okay, this is not how it should be in real world applications, right? You should have a message ideally if the job is not found. So you should have a message like job not found, and the code should be 404. And if it's found, then you should have this JSON which relates to job. How do you control this? So this can be controlled better with the help of ResponseEntity. Now what is ResponseEntity? So ResponseEntity is a class in Spring, and it's a wrapper that represents the entire HTTP response. So here you're seeing an output. Okay, when you send a request to the server, you are seeing a response which is being visible to you over the HTTP protocol. It's an HTTP request, right? So the response you are getting is an HTTP response. Now, ResponseEntity is a class that is available in Spring, which wraps this particular response and gives you a better control over the response. It allows you to customize the status codes, like if you wish to, and you can even have messages out there. All right. So essentially what I mean over here is it's allowing you to customize the HTTP response. Okay. And that is one of the important benefits and the problem that it solves. So here we are facing this problem and we can use this as a solution. And the benefit of this is, number one, the customization of response. It allows you also to handle the response in a flexible way. Okay. So you can handle different scenarios, different conditions within your controller method, and return different status codes based on the success or failure of the operation. Okay, and you can include additional information in the response as well if needed. All right, so this is all you can do with the help of this particular class, and using this class has one more benefit. So one benefit is customization of response. Second is it allows you to be flexible with your response handling. Third one, it enables you to do consistent API design. Okay, so by using this, let's say ResponseEntity class, you have a consistent design across the API. And how? That is something we'll see shortly. Now, this is about HTTP response entity. Okay, now if you go over here, it's a class. So if I go to the bottom of the page, if I type in HTTP, okay, it won't show up over here. I need to type in inside a method also. Okay, so I'll type in over here HTTP response. Sorry, not HTTP response, it's response entity only. Like so. So you can see this is coming in from org.springframework.http. Okay, that is the entire package. Okay, now there is one more class that you need to know. Okay, which is HTTP status, and it is coming in from the same package org.springframework.http. Now what does this class do? So this class is an enumeration, you can say, of all the HTTP codes that are present in an HTTP protocol and that you need to use with an HTTP response. Okay, so if I enter HTTP status, okay, and if I, let's say, press Control on Windows, or you can press Command on Mac and hover on this. Okay, so this will be converted into a link and you can go inside this particular class. So this class opens up. Okay, it's a .class file, as you can see over here, and it's being opened over here in the human readable format. Now if you take a look over here, this is an enum object. It's enum. It implements status code, and you can see all the status codes over here. Like you can see accepted, created, 200 OK. 200 OK means successful, and the reason phrase is OK. The reason phrase over here is created, this is accepted, and so on. Okay, if you scroll down, you have like the status codes beginning from 3, like 300, 301, which is moved permanently, redirect, and so on. If you scroll down, you have 400 as well, like starting from 4. So bad request, unauthorized, and so on. So all the status codes are present in this particular, like this is one of the enum objects, not a class. So enum objects which you can use. Okay, and you can make use of this in your code to have better control on the response. Now using this enables you to have one, standardization of status codes. It enables readability and maintainability as well. So your code becomes much more readable, self-explanatory as to what is happening, and we'll see this shortly in fact. Okay, and it enhances the maintainability and eliminating the need to remember a specific number of status code. Okay, so it's all available within this particular thing here, HTTP status, and you don't need to remember the codes. It's all in there. Okay, it also helps you with error handling, error mapping. Okay, so there are these benefits. Okay, and we'll see all of this shortly. So let's start using this. Okay, so right now there is no standardization. If you take a look at our API, okay, the API that we have built. So here we are returning a job object. Now here we wish to return a string response, but we couldn't, okay, because the return type is job. Now here we wish to have, we are returning a string again, so there is no consistency. So what we are going to do is we are going to update the controller to return response entity. All right. So let's start with get job over here. Okay, so this is get job by ID. Okay. Now instead of returning the job, I'm going to say response entity. Okay, and I'm going to have a pair of open and close brackets, and I'm going to say job, like so. Okay, now we have added response entity, and an import statement will be added over here. Okay. So you can see this response entity import statement. Okay. Now I need to remove this red marks. Okay. So here, instead of returning the job, I need to say new response entity. Okay. And I need to return the job over here, like so. All right. Now it's giving me an error again. Okay. And it is asking you, okay, so the error is because we are not passing the HTTP status. So I need to say HTTP status dot, and you can see all the status code appear over here. Okay. Now the status code is okay. Okay. I'll specify okay over here and the error goes away. All right. So what we are doing is we are creating a response over here with job object and the status code as well. So we are having a better control now on what is being shown to the user. So we'll modify this thing also. Okay. For the same, I'll say new response entity here, and I'll say HTTP status not found, like so. All right. So this is done. All right. Now I can hit save, and now let us rerun our application. So the application is started. Now head over to Postman. Now let us try accessing 31. If I say 31, you can see here 404 not found. All right. It's no longer 200. Okay. Okay. Now if I, let's say, create a job over here, and if I try to get a job with ID 1, and if I say send, you can see we have 200 okay and the job object. So this is working perfectly fine for different scenarios, like whether a job exists and it does not exist. All right. Now what you can do is you can even update the other controller methods in order to have a consistent design. Okay. So here we have added new response entity. I'll copy this. Okay. You can go over here. So let us do it for the create job method here. And I'm going to say response entity. This is going to be a string. Okay. And I can say new response entity here, like so. And I'll pass in this, like so. Okay. And I'll mention HTTP status dot okay. And there is one more way of like just rewriting the syntax. Okay. I'll do this for like all jobs over here. Okay. I can say response entity. I'll add this or wrap this within response entity. And now over here, I'll say response entity dot. So there are a lot of methods over here. You can see, okay, status, okay. You can see okay also as a method. Create is also a method created. So I'll say okay, like so. And I'll add this as the parameter, like so. Okay. So this is another way of doing the same thing which we did over here. Either you pass HTTP status okay, or you use the method within response entity class. It's perfectly fine. So I'll rerun this. Okay. Now after rerunning, let us test this. So we try to get all the jobs. You get 200 okay. Okay. Here we try to create a job. So you get 200 okay. Here you can even have, instead of 200 okay, so you can even have, since we are creating a job, you can say created as well, which is okay. Like if you wish to have created as well, otherwise 200 okay is also fine. Okay. And now if you get jobs over here, you'll get all the jobs with 200 okay. So what happened now is we have better control over like what user sees in the form of status codes, the messages as well. Okay. And we have achieved all of this with the help of response entity and HTTP status. All right. So you can see there is also a very good consistency in the API design. So everything is returning response entity and there is a consistent format that is being followed throughout. Now, if this code base grows really huge, okay, it's really important. Like, that is when consistency comes into play. Okay, you don't want code that is scattered and is not consistent at all. Okay, it would be difficult for others to read and understand what's happening. All right, and you also now have a really good control over the status codes. So that's about response entity and HTTP status, and all about having control over the response. Welcome to this class. So let us keep building our job application. Right now we have quite a few endpoints done, and we have few endpoints pending. For example, we have this delete endpoint that we have not defined yet. And using this endpoint, a user who is using our application and calling the APIs should be able to delete a specific job by ID. And here is how this particular URL will be called. So we have defined a get, like 2 get requests, 1 post, and now it's time to define a delete request. So what I would want you all to do is, I would want you all to take this up as a challenge. So like we have defined a get request, a post request, you can define a delete request which accepts the ID as the query parameters from the user, from the URL, and then you use that to pass it on to service, and service in turn deletes the job by ID, and it actually gives a success response. All right. And if this particular job is not found, like for which the ID is received, you send out a 404 or not found status code. So it's pretty simple. It should not be a lot of challenge, but I would request you all to give this an attempt. If you're able to solve, that's perfectly fine, and congratulations. But if you're not able to, that's also okay. So the goal of this challenge is not that you should be able to solve this challenge successfully. Of course, you should be, but the goal right now here is to get you started to write code by yourself. You should do the thinking, and this will give you immense confidence in your daily job. Trust me, guys. So attempt this challenge. Even if you're not able to, that's perfectly fine. Like if you get errors and if you're not able to solve this one entirely, but give this an attempt. That will give you confidence. All right. So pause the video right now, come back and watch me solve this challenge. So welcome back. I hope you all got a chance. And how did it go? So let us solve this by ourselves. Okay. So I have a method over here which gets the job by ID. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another method which will delete the job by ID. Okay. And I'm going to say public. I'll say response entity again because I'm going to return response entity, and I'm going to say string, and I'm going to say delete job. Okay. So delete job. And over here, we are going to accept a long ID variable, which will be passed in as a parameter over here. Okay. Now here, I need to say Boolean, and I need to say create a variable Boolean deleted. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass this ID to the service, and service will take care of the deletion. If the deletion is successful, it will return true. If it's not, it will return false. And that's the exact reason why I have created this variable Boolean. Okay, now I can say job service dot delete job by ID. Now we need to create this method. We are going to see all red marks, which is perfectly fine. This is going to last for a while. This will go away as we fix the errors. So I'll say if deleted. Okay, so this should be deleted. Okay, and if this is deleted, then you can return new response entity. And what I will say is I'll say job deleted successfully. Like so. Okay. And I can say HTTP status okay. So this is done. This is the successful scenario. Now what happens if this is not deleted or the job is not found? So you can say return new response entity, and I can say HTTP status dot not found, like so. Okay. So this is done. We have defined the logic in the controller which handles the deletion of a particular job for which you have received the ID. Now we need to get the ID from the path variable. Okay. And we need to map this to the URL. Now how are we going to map this? So we can say get mapping, post mapping, or we have something called as delete mapping. So you can see the suggestion over here. Delete mapping. We are going to make use of this. This indicates that this is a delete request. Okay. I can say jobs slash, and I'll mention ID over here, like so. Okay. So this has been added and this method is complete. Now we can head over to service. So we need to create this method delete job by ID. So I'll hover on this and you'll see this option which is presented to you by IntelliJ. So what you can do is you can select this and save some keystrokes. So I'll use this and you can see the method with the appropriate return type is created. Now this is created in the interface. What I need to do is I need to go to the implementation class, scroll up, and here you'll see an error, which is of course you need to implement the method which you have just defined. So I'll say implement methods and we will implement this particular method over here. Okay. So this is a method where we are going to actually write our delete code. Okay. So what am I going to do is what we need to do, we need to get this ID. We need to search for the job with this ID. And then we need to remove it from the list. Okay. So I'm going to say iterator job. Okay. This is something. I'm going to say iterator is equal to jobs dot iterator. So I'm going to create a new iterator object over here to iterate over jobs. All right. Now I'm going to say while iterator dot has next. Okay. And now within this while loop, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the job. So I'm going to say job is equal to iterator dot next, like so. Okay. Let me end this with the semicolon. So we have the job over here and we are just traversing through the list. Okay. Now I'm going to say if job dot get ID here dot equals, and I'll say ID, like so. I'll say iterator dot remove. So I'll remove this particular object and I'll return true. So we'll return once we find the object or the item with this particular ID over here. So once this is removed, we return true. And if this is not removed in the end, which means, so if this loop gets exhausted, it means that there is no job with this particular ID and hence we need to return false. And if we return false, what happens? Here, this condition fails and this is returned, which means not found. All right. So I hope you have a clarity now. So we have created this method first, delete job by ID. We have declared this in the interface. Then we implemented this into our implementation class, which is the job service implementation. Now here with the help of iterator, we are traversing through the list and we are fetching every item or every object that we have in the list. And we are assigning it to this job object. Then we compare the ID. If ID matches, remove. And once it's removed, return true. And if there is no match, you return false. And controller logic is fairly simple. Okay. So I'll just run this. Okay. So in controller, we are just getting this Boolean value and we are playing on this Boolean value. Okay. So if the Boolean is true, then we say it's deleted, or else we say not found. So application is started. Let's head over to our postman. And now over here, what we need to do is we need to duplicate this request. So we need a delete request, right? Okay, so I'll change this to delete. I'll edit this. So this is the name that I wish to have a good name. And now we will execute this query. So we'll say 1. Okay, so we got an error. Now, why did we get an error? So the error is because there are no jobs right now in the list, and there is no job with ID 1. So if you try to get a job with ID 1, you don't get any response. You get 404 instead, which means that a job with this ID does not exist, right? Now here, I'll create a job. Okay, so this is the job with ID 1. I'll hit save. Okay, this is gone. Now, if you say get 1, you have a job. Okay, let me add one more. I'll say job with ID 2. It added successfully. And now if you get all the jobs, you can see there are 2 jobs now. Okay, one with ID 1 and the other one with ID 2. Now what I'm going to do is, let us come over here to delete request. Let's delete the one with ID 1. So I'll fire this query and you get 200 OK. Okay. If you run this again, you get not found because it's deleted now. Okay. How do you verify it's deleted? You come over here, you fetch all the jobs. Okay. So if you say, give me all the jobs, you can see the one with the ID 1 is removed from this array and you just have one job with the ID 2. So I hope this was okay, and I hope you all have a complete clarity as to how this worked. Now delete API also works in a similar way as other APIs. Okay, it uses ResponseEntity Class. Okay, and if you are not able to find, or if the application is not able to find a job with a particular ID, it will return not found, else it will return 200 OK. So that's about the delete functionality that we had to implement. Hello everybody, welcome to this class. So we have get, like the get request, post, and the delete mapping created. Now we need to have a put mapping wherein we would want to allow users to update the information for a particular job by ID. Okay. And as you can see over here, the request body should contain the updated job details. So how this would work is, you can call this URL this way. Okay. And if I take it to Postman, okay, let me duplicate the post request. So I'll duplicate this one. Okay. This will be put request. And instead of jobs, it will be jobs 1 or whatever ID you wish to pass. And in the body, you will have the updated information about the job. Okay. And I'll just change this like so. And I'll hit save. Okay. So this is what the put request will look like. Now, what we are doing over here is we are specifying which job we want to update by specifying the ID over here. And then we are also giving the updated job in the JSON. Okay. So let's head over to our ID and implement this. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a method. I'm going to say public, and we can have response entity over here. And this would be string. I'll say update job. Okay. And here I'm going to say Boolean. So similar to delete, I'm going to say Boolean updated is equal to job service dot, let me scroll up a bit. So job service dot update job. Okay. And I'll pass ID over here, and I'll also need to give the updated job information to this particular method or service over here, right? So we are calling this method from service, and we need to tell which job to update and also what to update. So this is the updated job object. Now, how do we get both of this? So ID we can get in the form of path variable. Okay. because that is how it is going to be passed. So I can say long ID over here. Okay. And I can say request body over here. And I can say job, updated job, like so. Let me take this on the new line. Okay. So that you can see. So if you scroll up here, we are taking path variable. Okay. And in the post request, we are taking request body. So here we are using a combination of both path variable as well as we need request body, which will have the updated job information. And we pass this to update job. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if updated, like so. And I'm going to say return response entity. And here I'll have some string, and here I'll say HTTP status dot OK, like so. And here in the place of string, I'll say, okay, I'll say job updated successfully, like so. Okay. Now this is throwing some error. Okay, response entity. Okay, this has to be new over here. Okay, so this goes away. And now what I need to do is I need to create some room over here. And if the job is not found, what do we do? So I say new HTTP response entity. Sorry, not HTTP. New response entity. And I'll say not found. So it's from HTTP status dot not found, like so. Okay, so we are done. Now we need to create a put mapping over here, which would be the update request. Okay, so you can say put mapping, like so. Okay, and here I'm going to say jobs slash jobs slash, and I'll say ID over here, like so. So we are done defining the controller. Okay, now what I want you all to do is I want you all to try and attempt to define this update job service. Okay, so take this up as a challenge, pause the video right now and define this. All right, and come back and watch the solution. So I hope you all had a chance to attempt this. So I'm going to continue solving this. So if you hover on this, you will see create method update job. I'm going to hit create and it will create this for me. Now I'll go to service implementation and I'm going to implement the methods here. Okay. Now here, what we are going to do is we are going to iterate through the job object or the job list, I should say. And then we are going to check every job ID with this particular job ID. And then if we found a match, we have to update all the values. Okay. So I'm going to say for each, I'm going to say job, and here I'm going to say jobs. Okay. And here I'm going to say if job.getID.equals, okay, it has to be ID over here, like so. And here I'm going to define the logic now. Okay. So it has to be this way. And let me press backspace. Okay. Now, what are we going to do? So if we find a match with the ID, okay, we are going to say job.setTitle. First, we are going to update the title and we are going to say updated job.getTitle. I'm going to duplicate this. We will say set description and then updated job.getDescription. Duplicate again. Okay. We'll say set. So after description, you can say set minimum salary, then set minimum salary, duplicate. So do this for all the variables that we have. Okay. And I can say set maximum salary. Okay. There are some semicolons being added. So I'll just remove that. Okay. And this seems incorrect. Okay. Okay. This should not be set. This should be get. Okay, get minimum salary and get max salary. Okay, like so. And there should be set minimum salary. Set maximum salary, like so. Okay, So yeah, and one more variable is pending. So title, description, and we need to say location. Okay, so set, and here we need to get location. Okay, so we are done updating all the variables that exist, and here I need to say return true. Since we are returning a Boolean value, this is important. We need to say return true, and then here we are returning false. So what would happen is if the match is not found, so this iterates through the job list, compares for a match with the ID. If this is not found, you return false. If it's found, it's updated and return true. Okay, it's simple. Now, one thing to make a note over here is we are not updating the ID over here. Okay, and ID usually, whenever you're building software systems, ID is the unique identifier which is not supposed to be updated. It is like a primary key or a unique identifier that you wish to have constant for a particular record. Okay, if you are creating a bank account, you will have a customer ID which is not updated. If you want a new customer ID, you create or you become a new customer. Okay, so a new record has to be created. So I'm avoiding that bad practice and I'm not updating the ID over here. Okay, so we are done. Now let us run this application and let us test the results in the Postman. Okay, so the application is started now. Let's head over to Postman. Okay, so we have this. Okay, so let me get all the jobs now first. So there are no jobs. So I'll create a job first. Okay, job created. Get all the job. You have software engineer needed with ID 2. So let us update this. Okay, so I'll say updated. Okay, and I'll enter updated like this. Okay, I'll copy this. This has to be 1 instead. Okay. Oh, I'm updating it at a wrong place. 1 second. So this is there. This is a post request. I need to update it in the put request. Okay. So since we will be firing the put request, so let me close all the tabs here. Okay. All the tabs are closed. So if you do a get request, you get all the jobs, which is like this one job only exists. Now let us update this job. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say title, and here I'm going to add updated like so. Okay, here also I'm going to add updated, 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 and updated. Okay, let's see if everything updates successfully. You can see 200. Okay, now if I say 11 over here instead of 1, you'll get 404. This is working perfectly fine. Okay. Now what I need to do is I'll change this to 1 again and I'll save the request. Now I'll go to get all jobs and let us fetch all the jobs. And you can see everything is updated except the ID. Even if you pass ID over here, so even if I pass ID, like if I pass ID as 10 and if I send the put request, it won't work, like it won't update because we are not setting or we are not updating it in our code. Right? We are just ignoring the ID, even if it's sent by the user. Okay. So this is about the put request and how you can get it to work in our job application. All right. That's about this class. I shall see you all soon. Thank you. Hello everybody. Welcome to this class. So I wanted to spend some time talking about request mapping annotation. So request mapping is an annotation that is provided to us and it can be used at method level as well as class level. So at method level, you have different methods here now, you can see. And we have used different annotations like get mapping, post mapping, we have used delete mapping, and then put mapping. Now, instead of these annotations, you can use request mapping as well. Okay, you can just comment this out, put mapping, and you can say request mapping like so. Okay, and you can specify 2 parameters over here. Okay, so one is value. Okay, this says the URL. Okay, you need to specify the URL in this particular parameter, and then you need to say type, which is with the help of method parameter. So you can say type, and the type over here is request type. Okay, so you can say request method is put. So you specify the path and the request type like this, and this is the mapping that you are using, request mapping. Okay, so you are using two parameters, one is value and one is parameter name method. Okay, so this is also something that you can use, and you can use it for everything. Like you can use it for get, you can use it for post, you can use it for delete as well. Okay, so you can create your URLs this way as well, and it will work perfectly fine. But then why did we use this one, like put mapping and all? So the reason is request mapping exists. Okay, it's an option, but put mapping, get mapping, and post mapping, delete mapping, these are all specialized versions. Okay, when we use put mapping and all directly, it becomes really evident as to what the request is doing, and it also reduces some code. Okay, so this is about request mapping at the method level. So at the method level, request mapping annotation is used to map a particular method to a specific URL. Okay, now this is at method level. Now how does it work at the class level? So you can use this annotation at the class level as well. So I can say request mapping, okay, and I can say /jobs. Now what happens when you do this? So when request mapping is applied at a class level, it sets a base URL or a base URL path for all the methods that are handling requests in that particular controller. Okay, what means is, like here, if you take a look at all the URLs, you have /jobs, you have /jobs here, you have /jobs again, /jobs again, and here also /jobs. So /job is the base URL over here. So domain name /jobs is the base URL for this entire controller. So I can just remove /jobs from everywhere like so. I can remove /jobs from here as well. Okay. So here I will delete this entire thing, and from here as well. Okay. Now what we did is like instead of having /jobs in every URL, we have just defined a parent or a base URL for this particular controller. So any request that comes at localhost :8080/jobs is redirected to this particular controller now. Okay. So this tells that URL ending with /jobs is supposed to be handled by this particular controller. Okay. And it reduced a little bit of repetition over here. Okay, now if in future you wish to change the base URL, you just have to change at one place and it's applied for all the controller, rather than going to every request, like every method, and changing it individually over there. For example, /jobs, let's say in future you want to remove the S. So in the older version, like we just removed the URL mapping that we had everywhere. Okay, there we had to modify every method. So you have to go to every method and change and remove the S over there. But this makes life much more easier. Okay, so this is what request mapping is. Okay, now if I run this, I'll stop and rerun. You can see application started and you can get all the jobs. It's working perfectly fine. You can see you can post a job, you can put the job, you can get a particular job, and you can even delete the job. Okay, so everything works perfect. All right, so I just deleted the job, and that's why the array is empty or the list is empty. So this is how request mapping annotation works. So always remember, it works at two levels: class level and method level. Class level, it's used to define or set a base URL for a particular controller, like we have done over here. And at the method level, it can be used this way. Okay, it can define the URL that this particular method is supposed to be mapped to. So that's request mapping annotation for you.